The initial hype after the PSVR 2 release has slowed down quite a bit these days. The main culprit is a lack of games, released or even announced. And I'm talking about new games, not older games that got ported to the platform. I mean, there are a couple of announcements, but very few with a release date or even window. There's a stylish roguelike shooter Synapse by Dreams, Capcom's Resident Evil 4 VR mode, the tactical PvP shooter Firewall Ultra by First Contact Entertainment, and then there is Crossfire Sierra Squad. While all these games look promising, today we will talk a little bit more about Crossfire Sierra Squad for one reason. Crossfire is one of the biggest video game franchises in the world, and the studio behind it, Smilegate Entertainment, you might know them as the developer of Lost Ark. They basically have unlimited resources and they could just make a AAA VR game if they want to. While AAA gaming comes with its own slew of problems that we VR gamers are spared from so far, mostly, VR just needs at least some big titles in order to grow. It needs its Half-Life Alyxes and its Call of the Mountains. So the question is, will Crossfire Sierra Squad join the ranks of the industry-defining AAA VR games? Does it even want to? Well, we won't know for sure for a couple of more months probably, but we can speculate a bit. A AAA studio making a VR game is not a guarantee for success or even a good game. EA and Respawn tried with Medal of Honor Above and Beyond and failed. Both Half-Life Alyx and Horizon Call of the Mountain were made to sell hardware, right? As a game alone, they did not have to be profitable, they just needed to be shiny enough to lure players into investing into pretty expensive gear. This for sure had an impact on the design philosophy behind these games. For Smilegate that is obviously not the case, I'm sure they want to make money, but maybe, just maybe that is not the only motivation to make Sierra Squad. But before we get into that, let's talk about what Crossfire actually is and a little bit about the history of the franchise for context. As I have said earlier, Crossfire is one of the biggest video game franchises in the world. If you're like, what is this guy talking about? I've never heard about that in my life. Well, then you're probably not from Asia. Crossfire was released as a Korean answer to Counter-Strike back in 2007. According to Smilegate in 2020, it was the most played video game in the world with several million concurrent players and over 1 billion accounts created in total. That's a lot of accounts. And all that mainly stems from the success in South Korea and China. In the West, the game never gained traction, in a way that makes it even more impressive. The main game alone makes over $1 billion in revenue every year and has by now been expanded into a multimedia franchise. There are several spin-off games, a TV show, very popular in China, and a feature film in the making. In case you didn't know, Korea is a very PC-oriented gaming market. They don't like consoles there very much, so most games from Korea will be made for PC primarily and maybe get a console port later. Crossfire never did, it's a PC-only game. Smilegate tried to push the franchise into other markets though. There are 3 mobile spin-off games, not surprising, but there was also 1 console release. Crossfire is available in the West since 2009 on PC. You can go and play it right now, it's free to play, but nobody does, and for a reason. It does have a pretty bad reputation concerning monetization. In an attempt to gain more traction in the West, Smilegate partnered up with Microsoft and released an Xbox spin-off called Crossfire X just last year that failed miserably. The game got negative reviews around the board and the servers actually just shut down. Until now there was no attempt to bring the franchise to PlayStation, just PC and mobile and the failed Xbox attempt. So why now? Smilegate actually have made VR games before, but with a clear focus on PC VR. That they decided to go the PSVR route this time could mean, well, I guess there could be a couple of different reasons. But one of the possibilities is that Sierra Squad is a further attempt to bring the Crossfire franchise to a new audience. But we are getting ahead of ourselves. What actually is Crossfire Sierra Squad? Well, it's not a PvP game. That's probably the first surprise. It's a single player and co-op focused arcade shooter. The arcade part is probably the second surprise, as this looks like one of your box standard realistic tactical shooters. It really is not. I don't know much about the Crossfire world and lore, but apparently there are 2 factions, the Global Risk and the Blacklist. The Blacklist being something of a terrorist organization. You will play as part of the Global Risk Sierra Squad and try to find some infos about a secret special weapons. That's about it. I don't think story will be a big focus of the game. There will be a single player campaign with about 20 hours of content if you do all the side missions. There was a bit of confusion about the campaign being single player only, and it's a bit strange to be honest, because it is squad based. You will always be accompanied accompanied by 3 AI companions, but alas, single player only. There's a 2-player co-op mode though, which will have about 50 dedicated scenarios for you to play with a friend separated from the campaign, and there will be a horde mode with up to 4-player co-op. The game will feature 39 different weapons to play around with, from pistols to rifles, shotguns, snipers, RPGs, all the usual suspects. There's a wide range of enemies with advanced AI, which is supposed to be pretty good according to a public showcase they did at the GDC in March, something that was painfully lacking from VR shooters lately. Sierra Squad is mainly supposed to be an arcade shooter, but they will have an optional realistic mode which gets rid of the UI and make the player and the enemies die way faster. The goal here was not to create a hard mode, but to offer an alternative way to play with an altogether different playstyle. Sierra Squad is made in-house. Smilegate has a dedicated VR studio that has put out 2 VR games in 2019, albeit 2 very different ones. There's a VR dating sim called Focus on You that actually got pretty decent reviews, and the stealth action adventure game Rogan the Thief in the Castle that had a bit of a worse reception. These games were made by 2 different teams within the studio that joined forces to work on Crossfire Sierra Squad. So there's some VR experience, not necessarily in the shooter genre, but you know, better than nothing. We don't know anything about monetization. Smilegate have refused to answer questions about that so far. That could have 2 reasons. Either they have not decided on a monetization model yet, or they know people won't like their answer. They usually do free-to-play games that are heavily monetized through microtransactions. Their previous VR games are buy-to-play though, so this could be a $70 box price, this could be free-to-play, we just don't know. But I mean, let's be real, the game will have microtransactions. Smilegate even managed to cram microtransactions into their VR dating sims, so yeah, it is what it is. In an Unreal Engine developers interview by Epic Games, Sierra Squad's game director Sang-Kyun Lee talks a bit about their decision to make a game for the PSVR 2. He directly mentions that the use of adaptive triggers and haptic feedback allowed for the most realistic shooting experience possible in today's VR market. As an example, he explains how the headset rumble will trigger when you aim down sights, which is pretty cool, but you know, not a very surprising argument to make for the PSVR 2. There was another section in the interview that I found to be more interesting. He said that in VR low frame rate directly contribute to motion sickness, so performance is one of their highest priorities, and he is absolutely right about that. If performance really is one of their main priorities, the PSVR 2's foveated rendering obviously helps a lot. Also, it fits into their strategy to try to push the Crossfire franchise to a Western audience with console spin-offs. Crossfire X may have failed, but second time's the charm, maybe? So where does this all leave us? What does this mean for Crossfire Sierra Squad? I honestly don't think that this will be a game changer. It does not seem that Smilegate are trying to do something out of the ordinary here. But there's a high chance that Sierra Squad will be a very solid VR offering. The hands-on impressions at the GDC were all pretty positive, the production value seems to be very high, and maybe that is all we need. A solid, good, fun VR game to play alone or with friends. And maybe all that Smilegate wants is a Crossfire game that does not have negative connotations attached to us here in the Western market. Maybe. Crossfire Sierra Squad is announced for this summer exclusive to the PSVR 2. There's no exact release date yet. If you want to know when the game drops and if it is any good, consider subscribing. We do monthly VR news videos where we will be sure to cover this one as well as any other VR games coming to all the platforms. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.